Deception. The biggest deception in the history of mankind. A deception that could lead to the opening act of World War III may be at play with all this grappling over Greenland. I'm not talking here about the more probable possibility that Donald Trump is using his bluster over Greenland, his threats of war, and all these other threats, the tariffs, to get a better negotiating deal by his art of the deal with Denmark over Greenland. But I'm talking about something far bigger, far more nefarious that may actually be the beginnings of World War III. But before I go into that, we're going to go into a little bit of the background because, quite frankly, what's happening with Greenland doesn't quite make it a lot of walking around sense. I mean, Donald Trump is saying, hey, we've got to control Greenland to control the Arctic, that it has to be the United States in full control. And part of his argument is that, you fight for things you own better than not. And he doesn't believe that Greenland can put up the required requisite defenses, and that, in fact, he would posit that he's actually said that Russia or China will take Greenland if we're not in possession of it. There might be some truth to that because definitely Greenland is a great prize and it's not defended. I mean, you got 57,000 people there and 150 Danish soldiers. Yeah, what's that going to put up for defense should Russia or China decide to take it if the United States don't get it? Now, all that aside, we do have agreements with Greenland, with Denmark, and we have for some time, for decades, over military bases on Greenland. We had a lot more in the past than we have today. We're now down to one, what we call Teal in the past, which is now, the Space Force base, early warning base. But on the surface, it would seem, and the Prime Minister of Denmark has said that you're free to open bases and military bases in Greenland. Now, however, you might note, just on the more negotiating side of this, to take the public view, you might say that indeed that may be true, but for some reason, the United States thought it was very important to keep Operation Iceworm secret. They didn't tell the Danes that they were planning to put nuclear military launch bases in Greenland inside the ice. That Camp Century, the public piece of this, what the public saw was just a research project. That's what Denmark was led to believe. So if we really have such an open, uh, uh, you know, cart to what we can do in Greenland, then why do we need to keep that secret? And what is Trump planning to do? I've covered some of this in the past, but I'm going to reveal something to you here that nobody else is telling you. You're not going to see this anywhere else except right here on Green Gregs, and it's a possibility. Let's hope it's not what they actually are planning, but it could be because just this whole theater of what we're seeing, it's like a big kabuki theater. Like I said, it don't make walking around sense because if you go further, this whole big thing where we just had a whopping defense force mounted in Greenland by NATO to stop the United States from invading, of a ginormous 42 troops added by NATO. Yeah, they added a dog sled. And unfortunately, one of the dog sleds ran away already. So what I'm talking about here, Denmark themselves has about 150 troops there, as I mentioned. Not exactly a stellar force. However, but France, well, they put 15 soldiers there. Germany sent 15 soldiers. Sweden sent 2 to 5 personnel. We don't know exactly. Norway sent 2 service members. The Netherlands sent a whopping 2 service members. And Finland, 2 service members. The United Kingdom and Belgium each sent a whopping 1. so, so what are they going to do with that? Give me, one YouTuber said, give me 5 good guys from Florida and they'd take them all out. So I would posit from many potential states. So that really isn't much of a threat to the operations of Greenland or against the United States, should the United States want to use military action. But for one, I really don't think Trump plans to attack Greenland, but it may look like it. And in fact, there could be what looks to the whole world like a beginning war between U.S. and NATO. It could look like a war starting. And in fact, they may even stage false battles, at least one, as part of this grand deception. I'm going to reveal to you in a little bit. But first, we'll go into and we'll look at some of the other aspects of what's going on. But what you need to know is, hang on, let's do a share screen here. Once again, this is Greenland and where it fits in the geopolitical space of the world. Very strategic land. Very strategic. You can see it's right up here in the middle, almost in the middle of the North Pole. It's the closest thing there is to the North Pole. And most of Russia's missile bases are down here, the bulk of them. They got a few scattered around. But from Greenland, you definitely would have the best advantage to detect the sort we do here. This was known as Fuel Air Force Base in the past. Now it's a Pitufik, I hope I was saying it right, Space Base of our Space Force. That is the best place for early warning. Man, maybe up here would be better. But overall, Greenland does control the potential for, and this is not where I'm going with this, guys. This is just kind of the background to make Trump's argument. I got something bigger. Just hang with me here. So this is, as you can see, 2,000 miles between Moscow and Washington across Greenland. Greenland will be where most of the missiles would fly over. The ones that don't fly over Greenland would be approaching very close, close enough that interceptors from Greeley, excuse me, not Fort Greeley is over here, which has interceptors. Interceptors from Greenland, it also starts with GRE, right? GREE, Greenland, Greenlee. Yeah, I was at Fort Greeley myself. Greenland would give you a much better advantage for intercepting other incoming missiles. It's a faster time to launch from here. You can intercept them, maybe not just in the mid-course, maybe closer to Russia, maybe closer to the boost phase from Greenland. So you'd have several opportunities from Greenland as a missile interceptor base. I've also posited in one of my other videos, I'll show you in a little bit, that Greenland would actually make a better base if you can put our missiles there for intercontinental ballistic missiles, because again, short flight time to Russia. You could actually put the warheads on smaller missiles because they have less distance to travel. It doesn't take as much velocity, and you can still get there faster. You can use smaller, cheaper missiles, and you can put them under the ice and move them around where Russia wouldn't know where they're at. And moreover, just look where this is at. If Russia decided to nuke our missile bases in any war, any nuclear war, the strategic weapons will be the first target. So you can bet the ones in Greenland would be the first target. So if we moved all our missile bases from the Dakotas and Montana and put them up here in Colorado and put them up here, then the United States would not get such a big, heavy load of radiation. Most of the radiation in a nuclear war that the United States would experience would come from attacks on those missile bases. That would be the bulk of the nuclear attacks on America. Now, if it was up here, you guys say, oh, what about the poor Greenlanders? Well, here's the thing to know. From tip to tip, Greenland is 1,577 miles long. From the Canadian border down to the lowest tip of Texas is about the same, 1,607 miles. Now, if you ever looked at the radiation tracks, and I've shown those in previous videos on missiles launched from here, most of that's going to go up here in the northwest. Most of the countries aren't going to suffer. The same way here with Greenland. Prevalent winds would take the radiation not down to where the population of Greenland's at. No, just like it wasn't here either. We would get radiation from other cities and sites being hit, but most of the radiation would go straight back to Mother Russia, which would make Russia a lot more unlikely to nuke us because they would suffer the blowback more than anyone. All these military bases around that they've just put around their Arctic regions would be the first to suffer from their own attack. And we would get very little of it. And even the people of Greenland, they wouldn't get any of it either. All the winds would take it straight to Mother Russia. So from a strategic standpoint, it's the best place for interceptors. It's also the best place to launch intercontinental ballistics from America, should we want to attack either Russia or China or North Korea for that matter. It's the single best site for either just in terms of geography, distance, missiles. Now, it's a tough place to operate. You're operating on a ice sheet, ice pack. It's not like a glacier. This is a permanent ice pack. And logistics to it would be challenging. However, if we could pull that off, it would be worthwhile strategically. Now, I'm not saying that's what we're going to do. Now, that may be why Trump is pushing so hard for Greenland, but I think there may be something else. I think it may not be that at all. And that's what I'm going to go into here with you guys. But first of all, we're just going to go down the road of what they're telling us, the public story. Then I'll give you the skinny on what I'm thinking. And I actually did a prequel to it. Yes. And indeed, this is the prequel. I did this entire video as a prequel to this video. So I'll show you the link at the end. So you definitely want to watch this video about Masters of the Skies, the plan to, well, I will go into that later. I don't want to give everything away too much right now, but this is a video where I talked about the strategic advantages of Greenland, why Greenland matters from a strategic standpoint. Of course, if you go back and you also got to realize that the world's trade routes around the Arctic, which is going to be the new hotspot, will all go through Greenland. And this GUIK, what's called GUIK gap here between Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom, all the Russian submarines have to go through this to access the Atlantic. So if they were going to make attacks on us here, they would have to pass through here, or next to Alaska through the Bear. So we could totally contain the submarine force, which is based here on the Kola Peninsula. The Kola Peninsula is also the base of their Navy, and it's the base of their other strategic forces, such as a lot of their aircraft. And like I said, they got missiles all down through here. So these are key aspects of the strategic paradigm and why strategically holding Greenland would hold Russia back. And China also wants to be operating up in here. And China's making deals with Russia and with icebreakers to open up the Northwest Passage, or what we call the Northwest Passage. It would be an Arctic passage for trade through here. And it would give them better access to Russian oil, among other things. But that's another topic we're going to visit in context of what I think this might really be all about. So, if we go back here and look at this stuff, Trump says anything less than U.S. control of Greenland is unacceptable. He's not negotiating anything other than full control by the United States at this point in time. Now, again, this could be just Trump's art of the deal for getting a better deal on Greenland. But it also may be a Sun Tzu art of the war tactic brought to you by the man who wrote the art of the deal, which would be the biggest Sun Tzu play in the history of mankind. That is what I'm really thinking may be cooking here. So again, here's talk. U.S. action on Greenland could come within weeks or months. Now we know they set up tariffs. Trump is starting a tariff with the countries in Europe that don't want to go along with the United States taking Greenland, including Denmark, UK, France, Belgium, and many others, of a 10% tariff. And that tariff is to increase to 25% on the 1st of June. Now, again, that could be a deception. They may not be planning to wait to the 1st of June for something to go down, especially if you take this article to heart within weeks or months. So this, like I said, we could see a big power play going on here. U.S. commander says Russian China Arctic patrols are not not for peaceful purposes. I do agree with that. So, and now we got a NATO nation saying, hey, we got a dire end of the world warning over Trump's Greenland threat, because they're talking about the breakdown of NATO. They're talking about how that could play into Russia's hands and how this could lead to World War III by other means. And that's a possibility, but I think they too are playing a little kabuki theater here, and it's all posturing. There's a lot of posturing from the Trump administration in Europe right now. But is it all about something else? Trump's alarming 11-word warning amid the Greenland World War III fears. So basically, again, he's saying, hey, we're going to take it. It's ours. And he's just not negotiating it. So I'm not going to go through and read the article. I'm just giving you the skinny on it because we're going somewhere else. I'm just kind of giving you a background here of what's out there in public discussion. Now, here's an interesting one. Senior Russian official says Greenland could vote to join Russia if Trump does not hurry. And indeed, we've seen China already trying to make deals in Greenland, and they were thwarted by Denmark. And that could be a reason that Trump is going for this because uh, China wanted to do their belts and roads initiative, the Great Silk Road into Greenland. They wanted to build an airport, which could have dual use for military purposes because that seems to be everything they're doing with their Belt and Roads Initiative and all these other countries. They're great big Silk Road stuff. But this is coming from none other than, of course, Dmitry Medvedev, who's been something of a war hawk of late. So he said, hey, if you don't take it, we'll take it, in other words. And furthermore, they've actually come out and said, yeah, well, the people in Crimea voted for Russia to take Crimea. There was a referendum. But what they're saying is Trump's not talking about a referendum for Greenland. That just wants to take it. So what he's saying here is we'll offer them a referendum, which means they may find a way to try to take it if we don't. So that's kind of a threat in a sense. So anyway, Russia vows to help Trump free Greenland and threat to NATO as World War III mounts. I mentioned this to you guys before. So again, this is Vladimir Solovyov in this case. Well, no, not him. Anyway, so what we have here, yeah, is he's been a big spokesman for Russian state TV, and he says free Greenland while he's mocking British and Prime Minister Keir Starmer. And basically, they've even said they might shoot NATO ships to aid the United States. Now, where Russia's coming across in this is across the map. They're making all kind of statements, statements like that. And let's say changes U.S. security strategy largely consistent with Russians' vision. So according to unverified information, a sudden referendum taking place. Again, they're going back to that referendum language there to make Greenland Russia's 90th federal district. So he's ridiculing them. And so what will they do? Nuke the United States? Uh, so yeah, this is from Medvedev again. Medvedev says they will just S word with a H and the word it in it. Their pants. He said they'll just their pants and give up Greenland, and that would be a great European precedent. And they're saying, but only Russia can stop this to save Greenland, Europe in a multipolar world. Denmark has chosen to abandon the broad international cooperation in the Arctic in favor of pursuing a confrontational policy toward Russia. This is according to Barbin over there, accusing Denmark of double standards in foreign policy. So Russia's having some fun with this, but they've also are scared of it to a point because they really don't want the United States to set up interceptor base and a missile base in Greenland. They really don't want that to happen. But they would love to see NATO fractured. Maybe because they figured the United States wouldn't defend some parts of Eastern Europe should Russia try to retake them if NATO fractures. And that's NATO's big concern now. So, and that's why Poland is saying, it's going to be a disaster if NATO turns on each other over Greenland. The end of the world as we know it. And they're expecting that it might mean World War III with Russia if NATO fractures. So, but Russia's also saying it might bring about the end of the world if Trump follows through on threat. And indeed, they're concerned about what the United States actually could do with Greenland, and they don't want to have their Navy and their strategic Air Force confined. And some of the Danes are actually, I have to stop the chair to bring this thing forward. Some of the Danes are actually coming out and making statements that kind of agree with Trump. And I'm going to show that right here. So this is the Danish general or admiral who's over the forces to defend Greenland. I'm going to blow this up and let you hear what he's got to say about it. What's kind of interesting. It kind of the military isn't talking the same language as the politicians in Europe. Listen to this guy.
Very close relationship with the US military. So I will not go into the political side of it. For me, it is about Russia. It is about what's going on in Ukraine.
He says is about Russia. It's about what's going on in Ukraine.
We see how Russia is conducting war in Ukraine. And when the war in Ukraine is over, hopefully with a good result for Ukraine, it is our expectation that Russia will move the resources that have been using in Ukraine on other theaters. And
So he's basically saying that Russia will move their resources toward attacking other theaters, and he's saying that is including the
that
Arctic.
is also including in the Arctic.
So there you go. This is the Danish commander over Greenland. Let's see, and his name is Anderson. So there we go. And here he is again, talking this at more length. I'm not going to replay all that. I just want you guys to get a feel for what some of the military actually thinks about it. And the military is somewhat agreeing with Trump. So that's most interesting. NATO ambassador says Europe has a tendency to overreact on the Greenland dispute. Yeah, I would agree with that, but I would also say that, hey, it's a lot of kabuki theater. Russia warns of global consequences if Trump moves ahead with plan. Again, not everybody in Russia wants to see it happen, and maybe none of them in reality. They like to see the division, but they don't want to see the United States actualize those bases up there in Greenland, as I was mentioning. That they don't want to see. But it may be something else. It may be not about bases. It may not be about any kind of military, anything in Greenland. That's the scarier part. And that's what you're going to hear uniquely on this channel in just a minute. Russia welcomes Trump's tariffs on NATO allies over Greenland as a collapse of the alliance. NATO, long warned of Russia-China threats to Greenland, rejects Trump's ownership solution. Mm-hmm. Despite the fact it wouldn't even be a free country. They were occupied by Germany till American forces went over and got the Germans out. You know, so much thanks from Denmark, right? French and Danes prepare for war in Greenland after Trump threatens to pull U.S. out. So threatening war, threatening war. They're going to fight us. Again, I think this is Kabuki theater. German, Dutch, and Canadian troops arrive in Greenland within hours. Of course, then let's see here. Fighter jets over Greenland. Well, two F-35s. Yeah, whopping two F-35s. So German troops exit. Oh yeah, look at this. Yeah, here's the other story. Abruptly after a secret Berlin recall. Maybe Trump told them to go home. Who knows what that is? But anyway, so NATO sends troops to Greenland after U.S. talks collapse. Britain chips in with a ginormous one officer, but it's already fallen apart. Almost half the forces they sent have already left. So a stunned Europe says Trump's pressure over Greenland is wrong and unacceptable. You can see all the bluster. The bluster's high. Why so much bluster, especially if nothing's going to happen? Donald Trump won't rule out leaving NATO over Greenland. That could be a good thing. Now, there are those out there who are saying, yeah, but if we get kicked out of NATO, Germany, the European countries are going to take all our assets and all those bases we have in Europe. All those assets were there just to fight Russia anyway. And if they take them, so what? It's costing us so much and money to maintain our forces in Europe and the risk of our country getting turned into the center and the blood of our young Americans going to war in Europe, it may be worth it to pull out of NATO, even if they do take those bases and take all our assets on those bases. I've been an advocate for pulling out of NATO for a long time. Macron on Greenland. If sovereignty of an ally is affected, knock-on effects would be unprecedented. Well, you got to realize macaroni here is basically trying to be he's a Napoleon wannabe. He would like to see France become the new dominant power in Europe. And so he's trying to he's wanting to put a new nuclear umbrella over Europe to protect Europe. He's trying to position himself as a protector of Europe. So he's trying to cut United States out of various contracts there and other things. So what? More power to him. Anyway, you guys from France might want to dispose yourselves of macaroni. Anyway, EU threatens to blow up trade deal over Trump's plans on Greenland. As you know, there's a new trade deal that was negotiated between Europe and America that might get deep sixed over this. These tariffs they're talking about. Okay, but then again, is this all bluster? Trump Greenland's latest. EU prepares, counter tariffs basically. They're trying to prepare for the U.S. tariffs and maybe counter tariffs against the United States. Protests explode in Greenland amid Trump takeover push. We're not interested in being Americans. Now, a lot of them do have that sentiment. That doesn't mean it's the majority sentiment, but it probably it's by the polls. It seems that most of Greenland wants to be independent. But when Greenland's independent, they may vote in to take in China or Russia. So what we need more than anything from Greenland is a deal not to do that, and maybe to allow some bases in northern Greenland. Anyway, anxiety grows in Nuke. Isn't it interesting? The capital of Greenland is called Nuke. It's Greenland's future after U.S. talks. So the people in Greenland are apprehensive right now. That's to be understood. There's some of them there that really supports America coming in. I've seen guys walk over and find Greenlanders walking around wearing MAGA caps. There are some of those. So Greenland officials break down in tears. This Greenland lady here, she broke down in tears after a live TV, the White House meeting failed to stop Trump's threat. I'm overwhelmed. Again, I don't see any liquid rolling down her face. This looks to me like a false cry. She's an actor, an actress, and not even a good one. More kabuki theater. Trump tells Greenland PM that's their problem, that the people in there in Greenland have a preference to stay with Denmark. Wow. Wow. Well, that's their problem. If they don't support coming to America, that's their problem. Wow. Buying Greenland could cost $700 billion, and only 1 in 5 Americans wants it. Seward's folly was not popular either. But look what had happened. It gave us Alaska, the great land, which had lots of wealth. Europe neglected Greenland's mineral wealth and may regret it. Well, that's kind of hard to develop that stuff, and Greenland on their own probably never will develop it because it takes a lot of resources to mine those challenging areas and process that stuff and bring it back. And quite frankly, I don't even know if we can do it, but if anybody could, it would be us. U.S. acquisition of Greenland, absolutely not necessary, according to the Danish foreign minister. And again, it's the hey, we'll give you access to Greenland. Well, you can set up your bases. Will they let us set up interceptor bases? Will they let us set up nuclear launch sites, ICBMs there? I don't know. Now, the Tennessean came out with an article that says, well, Trump's approach is wrong. We should go after Greenland. But he's saying, we need to be more negotiating and a little softer in the way we play it. Of course, that's not Trump's style with his art of the deal. So let's come back over here. Defeat of Russia and China with no nukes. So, as a video did, based on this study, the Masters of the Sky Master study that came out, which basically showed a pathway for taking out all the nukes in Russia and China and probably North Korea, like with the conventional weapons, not nuclear weapons, not Golden Dome, with the weapons that we already have in our inventory right now. He's, the report writers were positing the idea that we could actually right now take Russian, Chinese, and North Korean nukes out. We could target them at their launch sites, and even with short range air-to-air missiles, take a lot of them out in boost phase, and take a few out mid course. So that is what that report suggests. It didn't really talk about the potential for SAR bombers on Russian Poseidon torpedoes or the Brensnik nuclear cruise missile that Russia's just invented. But I don't know, that may fall in the category of what they're talking about. And they did talk about dealing with submarines, but those drone subs, those nuke subs, could be released early. So, and there's a lot of challenges to the stuff they put in there. No plan survives first contact with the enemy. And again, I also pointed out in that report, the best laid plans of mice and men, analogy. So it's fraught with danger, this whole idea. However, if you really thought that war with China was inevitable, and I think it really is. And like the Europeans think that war with Europe is inevitable. Not so sure about that. I don't think Russia has the wherewithal to push much further than they're already pushing in Ukraine. They might be able to take the Baltics, but I don't think they actually. I don't think they could. I really don't. I think our conventional forces are so good with our fighter aircraft, based on what we've seen lately, that they really couldn't. And if you look at Ukraine, with some hundred and some odd fighter aircraft as opposed to all the ones Russia had. Russia's never got dominance of the air over Ukraine with aircraft. So I think Russia's powers in these regards are somewhat challenged. So all that said, here's the proposition. The proposition is, if you wanted to attack Russia or China, the last thing you want them to think is you're going to attack Russia and China. In fact, the best way to make them think you're not going to hit them is you're about to fight each other. The best thing is, and even this whole civil war here in the United States that seems to be run might be tied to that. Make them think we're so tied up and we're all fighting each other to such a point we wouldn't possibly launch a World War III attack on our greatest near peer adversaries in Russia and China. So it would be the ultimate Sun Tzu move that we are about to fight each other, and that's why I said there might be a mock battle. In fact, the biggest indication that these things might be what they're planning, that they might be planning an attack on Russia and China, might be if NATO and the United States actually appear to be going at it at each other. Like I said, they might even stage a mock battle or the beginnings of one. So we got all our forces in the air. We're all about to get each other. And suddenly they all turn on Russia, maybe China, Russia and China. And suddenly we pull the teeth out of the bear and the dragon. I'm not advocating this, guys. Don't get this as advocation. This is maybe what our leaders are thinking, to pull the ultimate deception. Because if they think there's going to be a nuclear war, in any nuclear war, the winner, then there will be a winner if there's a nuclear war. There can be a winner. But to win a nuclear war, you have to strike first. There's no other way to win a nuclear war. You have to be the one with the first strike, the preemptive strike. So if we think that they're about to hit us, this might be the way to take the teeth and the claws out of the bear and the dragon. Might. It could go very, very, very wrong, though. And it could also ensue the big conventional war afterwards. I do think on conventional stats that we probably could beat Russia. And Europe would definitely want to concentrate on Russia. So what I would expect would be that if this is the scenario, I'm not saying it is, I think it's more likely that Trump is just posturing for his typical art of the deal maneuvering to push a better negotiating position for Denmark with Denmark over Greenland. But if they are actually planning to launch a World War III, a preemptive strike on Russia and China, a la Masters of the Sky report kind of an approach. The first thing they would do is take out the strategic weapons and then go for Kaliningrad, big time. Try to take Kaliningrad, which is that heaviest armed oblast of Russia, which is the exclave between Lithuania and Poland. They would try to take that out, and then they would go for Moscow. They would go straight for Moscow. And Moscow fears that they could be easily overrun because of the open roads. That's why they've been wanting to push their military, their borders back out. That's why they've been so concerned about NATO encroaching on them. However, had they not attacked Ukraine, Europe would have never thought about it. Europe is so content to not have military, that's so content to have America provide their defenses and save them the money so they can have their big socialist welfare states off the back of our taxpayers. That's what they really wanted to keep. But those days are over. America is tired of paying for Europe's way. So it may be that Europe has decided that, hey, we got to do something and we can't do it by ordinary means. So these things could come to pass. And so if the United States and Russia, if the United States and NATO attack, or NATO per se, look like they're about to have a civil war within NATO and suddenly turn on Russia and take out Putin and take out the regime that currently runs Russia, Here's the strategic thing to think. They wouldn't have to attack China except maybe to pull its nuclear things, take out its nuclear missiles. China suddenly would be energy starved. China, I talk about that trade route in the Arctic over northern Russia that China so much covets. Imagine if the United States or a friendly new government in Russia said, no, we're not selling to China. So just think about this. Venezuela, Iran, Russia. If all three of those fell to American control, China would have no petroleum to run its navy. China is looking at making a nuclear aircraft carrier, but their navy runs on diesel fuel, big dirty diesel fuel. They do not have a nuclear navy like the United States of America. So China would have a hard time pressing an attack on Taiwan if they couldn't fuel their navy, and they couldn't do much about it if we had pulled their teeth and claws from the dragon and eliminated the bear or put the bear on our side. And Trump could always say, Putin, I tried for the longest to get you to negotiate peace. Now, see, that's the other thing. Some people think that wasn't a genuine proposition. Oh, I think Trump was genuine. He gave Putin every chance he could. So he made sure to Putin, I gave you every chance I could. You kept saying no, or he'd say this to the rest of the world, not really to Putin. Putin would be locked up if he were still alive under arrest because he is wanted in the Hague. There are indictments against him, just like there were indictments against Maduro. So yeah, they would like nothing better than arrest Putin and whisk him over into Brussels under some form of arrest. So all that said, the United States could choke China off at this point completely. And China would suddenly, the dragon would be starving. The dragon already has a lot of economic issues and other issues. So this would really take the wind out of their sail for attacking Taiwan. And it wouldn't be able to do much back to us. So, Trump's got a meeting with Xi Jinping in April of 2026. Exact date's not been set. It's assumed it would be in Beijing. If all this stuff goes down, Trump would probably summon Xi Jinping to the United States or some neutral territory, like maybe South Korea, like the previous meeting, and serve him with notice of surrender. Said Xi Jinping, I'm serving you with the notice for your surrender, unconditional surrender, or maybe conditional. Because he probably don't want to go in and try to run China, and he may not even want to depose the regime, but he would certainly negotiate a new deal with China. Okay, China, play nice. You got things we need. We'd be willing to trade with you, but here's the terms: no military, no attack on Taiwan, set Taiwan free to be an independent nation, and just focus on commerce. Focus on your business. Your industries can still run. You can still do whatever, but no more bully in Nepal and with free Tibet maybe. Free the Uyghurs and and Western China. Who knows what he might negotiate, or he might just say CCP, step down, hold an election. I don't think Xi Jinping would sign that under any circumstance unless we threaten to nuke them, which I don't think Trump would do that. But I don't know. So there you go, guys. We could be at the beginning stages of World War III, the greatest deception ever, maybe the only thing Greenland's all about. And in a way, it makes a certain sense because what they're doing now don't make any sense at all. No sense. And we've already seen this report. I've reported that to you. I highly encourage you to watch it. So, is this what we're dealing with? If we are, it's still fraught with danger. And it could be that one of the terms of the deal that Trump would negotiate is send your sleeper cell agents home. And it might be one way to take on China. If you're not attacking China, you just attack Russia. You don't attack China. You starve China off and you pull their nuclear claws and teeth. China might not evoke their sleeper cells in America. They may not hit the kill switch on our power system because that is equivalent to a nuclear war. That would destroy this country just almost the same as a nuclear war. In fact, it could be worse if they really take out all of our power. I've talked about that in previous videos. The ramifications for why that's a lot worse than you think, far worse than you think. So Trump may be scheming a way to deal with it. He may be playing 6D chess now, possibly. On the other hand, he could just be doing it all because he's got a big ego and he wants to impress his billionaire buddies. And look, I got Greenland. What did you get? Or try to step up to the level of President McKinley, who took Hawaii and made a deal for Hawaii. He says, look, he got Hawaii, and I like him. So I turned the name of Mount Denali back to Mount McKinley. And so now I'm up there a little bit better than McKinley because Greenland's so much bigger and more strategic. I don't know, my friends. There are many possibilities here. We got a very interesting year ahead of us. And I would say it ain't going to be a full year before all this plays out. This will all play out before the summer's over, maybe within weeks. So if you see a big battle about to be staged between NATO and Europe, NATO, excuse me, within NATO, between the United States and Europe, this could be what it's really all about. And this whole kabuki theater might be set up to do this. I mean, Europeans may be playing along with it. This may be an inside deal that only a very few people in the most inside circles know. Not the general whose video I played. He wouldn't know about it probably. Maybe some of our top generals, well, he might if he is going to be launching stuff. But uh, so there you go. It would be help. And this could also explain why Trump called in all the generals and commanders and admirals all across our military for a 1 day meeting. And I don't think he would have even told them this plan, but he might have been vetting them. I think it was more of a vetting exercise. And once they vet them, they may have told the key ones. If they thought they couldn't trust them, they would have replaced them. Because this could be what's cooking. And why you need to know, you shouldn't be clapping with applause. I mean, if it prevents a bigger world war, nuclear world war, if they're that good, then it. And if World War III is, or America getting taken down by Chinese sleeper cells, EMP, whatever, is in the cards, and if this could avert that, it could be a good thing. But it's fraught with danger, very much fraught with danger. So for you preppers, you need to know that this could go bad if it's happening. And if it's not happening, and we do get in a war with NATO, that, I don't think NATO, like Medvedev said, what are they going to do? Nuke the United States? No. They're not going to nuke the United States. So, the United States would probably, if that were Trump's intention to militarily take Greenland, he could do it. But then we're stuck with a bill for taking care of the Greenlanders. But it might be worth it, maybe, on the economic side. But the Greenlanders aren't going to be happy, and the world opinion isn't going to be happy, and our allies, our allied relationships would fracture all over the world potentially. So, what is really cooking here? Like I said, on the surface, it don't make sense. It makes no sense. So, why don't you tell me in the chat below what you think is really cooking? I'm not saying this is what's going to happen. I'm just brought you something nobody else has talked about. A possibility that could happen. It could be what they're planning because it makes a certain amount of sense. It makes a certain amount of sense. It's crazy, but everything else is going on right now is even crazier. It's even crazier. This is crazy. Absolutely. It is bat guano crazy, but not near as bat guano crazy as a theater we're watching today. So, what do you think? What do you think after this report of the Masters of the Sky come out? So I'm going to encourage you guys, if you've not seen the Masters of the Sky video, watch it right here. I'm going to put that there. And then I'm also going to put another link. If you've already watched Masters of the Sky, watch my strategic Why Greenland Matters video here. And then I'm going to say thank you all for watching. Subscribe, bang the bell, click all. I need more subscribers. And again, thank you for watching. Greg out.